Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights with Sree and Sree. This is episode 177. Today is the 4th of June, Friday. We start with United States news. In US news, Biden holds firm on corporate taxes but trims infrastructure demand to 1 trillion. Welcome to PGurus channel, sir. And as always, it's a pleasure to have you on our channel as we together navigate the happenings around the world. President Biden's trimming of his infrastructure plan, what does that mean? Is the number now coming down from 2 trillion to a smaller number, sir?
Yes, good morning to everybody and happy to be here on Friday morning as we try to wrap up the weekend. There's plenty to cover, as Sree pointed out. To respond to your specific question, they're trying to get this done. There's the what we call as the infrastructure stimulus plan, which has been in negotiation forever since almost close to he assuming power. So what you have here is it's 2.25 trillion. It came down to 1.75 trillion. Then it got cut to 1 trillion. That simply implies that he wants to get the first phase of this plan into motion. I am sure there will be more executive orders coming in, more authorizations taking place. So there could be lots of things in what we call in banking on balance sheet and off balance sheet. So he's trying to get an on balance sheet approval for 1 trillion. There could be several billions on the off balance sheet side. That's what he's trying to get things done.
And calls grow for Fauci's resignation after more exposures happen of his emails. It also calls for criminal investigation grows. So this thing, we had warned it, I don't know how many people remember, as way back as in March 2020, that there is something more than meets the eye as far as Mr. Fauci's involvement in this whole thing goes. And this was a hangout that I had hosted with Dr. Shiva Iyer, and unfortunately for us on YouTube, it was pulled down. However, it is available in other platforms. People can go back and look at it. It just shows that, DGI and PGurus has a knack of trying to or are telling you what's going to happen down the line. Sir, your thoughts? Do you think he's being made the scapegoat? Is there a deeper rot than this?
It's very based on all the press reports that are now coming out, including from the left media, Washington Post, etc. And now Mike Pompeo went public today or yesterday, which is in making headlines, effectively to say that there was enough evidence. The evidence was suppressed by three types of people. One is, those from the medical field, and second, the intelligence and the State Department. He's blaming even the State Department. So the State Department and the intelligence suppressed any further discovery and pinning down on that this thing evaluated. What is this thing? The COVID actually originated from Wuhan lab. Dr. Fauci, for the first time, has made his statement to say, please release the data of those 10 or 12 people who died of an accident in Wuhan lab, the scientists. That would help us to identify the precise location and the cause of their death, and probably pin it down to the Wuhan lab itself. So this is the first time he's pointing out and asking the Chinese why he kept quiet. All this, we don't know. But the fact is that there is more and more data that is coming out revealing that people knew about it, but somehow, suppressed it. Facebook, okay, this is also in the news. Facebook, which used to pull down any news which assigned to Wuhan lab, is now putting those videos back. So the question is how collusive these tech platforms have been in advocating a political agenda that also needs to be investigated, not just merely the intelligence and the ecosystem, but the collusive and collaborative nature of the social media platforms, which is it is not their business to arbitrate on the content. It is not their business when they know that they have immunity and protection rights that is given to them as per the US laws.
Sir, when do you think this thing happened of the 10 scientists dying in the Wuhan lab? Approximate dateline?
Don't know the dateline. We know only the what you call the press release that has come out. Other than that, we don't know when this could be 2000. I don't know, 2019, 2018. We have covered a lot of these things. Some people even passed away in United States accidents and so on. So there's a whole range of. There's a CDC deputy director who has given a press statement interview saying, when he was trying to bring this information, guys, you can go and Google and look for yourself rather than we don't have the ability to put all of those links and news and so on. But there's enough news that the doctor has gone and made record that his life was under threat when he wanted to say that this was not. This is not a natural organic evolution, but it has come out of the lab. So there's enough evidence or enough anecdotal data that points to something that more than meets the eye in terms of the origins and the location of the virus.
One of the things that the United States has been proud of is its deep state and its loyalty towards the country. I can tell you there are so many families where generation after generation they will come and work for the government, and they took great pride in that. Money was not an object. Getting the interest of United States was. Unfortunately, the CCP in the last couple of decades have completely turned this thing upside down, and now we are beginning to see the amount of infiltration that has taken place of the CCP and CCP aided people in various organizations. We're going to say more, we are going to reveal more data on this in the coming days and weeks to come. In the meanwhile, let's take a look at another interesting move by the Department of Homeland Security. First of all, Homeland Security should be within the United States. What they are about to do is something laughable. DHS, with the support of Biden, is flying border crossers into US cities. Remember, we told you that they were busing them from the border into various cities. Now they are flying them. Wow. Whose money is being spent, sir?
It's taxpayers' money. So Mr. Biden has the keys to the kingdom, and Department of Homeland Security has much bigger room to draw cash from. So they are flying these people from into mainstream America and locating them into because buses probably takes time. It's faster for them to be flown. So they're being flown. Apparently, it is through some kind of a lottery system. So the lottery system, you pick, okay, you are now going to be flown into the city. So there is this sense of great rush to take these people into the cities, and that's quite tragic.
Only last week there was an official announcement that there is the border is sealed. No more new people. What happened, sir?
The border is not sealed. There are still surges, and there's still people flowing through the borders. And one of the things that we wanted to talk a little bit, but we can use this avenue to segue into that. Greg Abbott, the governor for Texas, has stated, I will be doing the job for Mr. Biden in the border because Mr. Biden is not doing what he's supposed to do, which is protecting the border.
Dereliction of duty. Lead investigator for Republicans calls for a special meeting to discuss the skyrocketing costs to house children illegally smuggled across the border. Now, this is the place where it started, the DACA program. And in the pretext of bringing or uniting families, suddenly we are finding out that each child is having like a dozen parents. I mean, this just is laughable. And how that can even be imagined and how everybody is accepting these kind of blatant white lies, I can't fathom. Sir, what is wrong with this country?
Well, I think there is a harmonization and normalization that Mr. Biden and his administration, the progressives, we call it as the Obama-Biden administration extension. Mr. Obama himself was quite explicit in stating that, Biden is completing the job that I left unfinished with all my ex-administration staff or with my administration staff. So I think that's what is going on here. They firmly believe that the border crossings are illegal. They believe that many people who are deported were not deported illegally. They were deported illegally, so they want to normalize it, so they're bringing the people back. holding people in Mexico was not correct, so bring those people on. There's 12 million illegal, 11 million illegal immigrants in United States, so normalize them. This was a subject matter of a great battle that took place both during the Obama years as well as during the Trump period. It quietened during the Trump period. So all this is the progressive agenda of harmonization. When you have the vice president of the country going across to Central America and or on video call speaking with Central America and saying, we're going to give you $400 million for your developmental work so that there's no illegal migration that comes across, that just is a reflection of why only Central America? There's more than 100 countries, people from 100 countries trying to enter via the US border. This was released by DHS itself. So the problem here is that the progressives have a specific agenda in terms of what they want to do with United States, how they want to what you call re-architect the population of the United States and the demographics. That seems to be the broader agenda here. And whether you think it is right or wrong is a matter of which side of the political spectrum you are in. If you happen to be on the progressive side, they think it is genuine. If you happen to be on the opposite side of the progressives, then you think, hey, how can all this be fair?
And federal court halts Biden administration from prioritizing minorities and women for COVID relief. So was there a plan in place to try and give shots first to children and women, sir?
Yes. Also
not children, but minorities. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Minorities. It is so the federal court has halted. So the objective was to give it to the minorities, and not based on medical condition, not based on age, not based on other factors, but factors which are discriminatory in nature. Because constantly the plea that is made by Dr. Fauci, Biden, and so on is Mr. Trump doesn't know science, doesn't believe in science. So how can you not apply the same principle when you are prioritizing based on the medical condition, right? So therefore, aged or ailing. But no, we'll prioritize some other way. So I think this is what the federal, generally this goes to the Supreme Court and gets blocked, but this seems to have been blocked in the federal court itself.
Viewers, you may have heard of the website, hugely popular, not website, but a YouTube channel called Real Finance. And Kyle Bass is one of those people who frequently comes there. And he has a following to say about the Chinese wind farm project in Texas. He says that it is a threat to national security. Your comment, sir?
Anything which is to do based on what we are observing and witnessing and what we will hear very soon is that anything that has got a touch of or a stamp of China seems to have a surreptitious agenda, which is contravenous to the benefit of a domicile state. It seems to be all roads leading to only one path, which is the Belt and Road. The Belt and Road all the way leads to China. So any developmental initiative that you're focusing on seems to have a circuitous map that leads towards the China. I think that is the point that everybody is trying to make.
And the Biden administration is contemplating cyber attacks against Russian hackers. What stopped them thus far, sir?
What stopped them from thus far?
Yeah.
I wish I am part of the Biden administration to give an answer. All I can say is sometimes there is a word that is used. It's called Sleepy Joe. So probably he has woken up and suddenly realizes, oh my God, all these cyber attacks are being directed. Now here's the crux. Just the news that is percolating through the system is the attack on the meat farm, the JBS. JBS. Is whether it is a precursor to attack the food supply chain in the United States. This is the rumor that is percolating. Is this not an isolated but a precursor to disrupt the food supply chain? And if that is the case, you can do power grids, you can do nuclear, you can do defense. They're all espionage. And basically to create disruption. But if you are going to do something in the food supply chain, it affects the fundamental ecosystem of living and well-being in United States. Hence, there is a concern now. So this is what is escalating to the administration. They're saying we can't kind of sit back and we need to figure out what's the next step that one must do, because it's opening the doors. It's opening the doors. This particular attack has opened the doors, and it can be, mind you, we also had on the colonial pipeline, and which disrupted completely the fuel supply or the gas supply, as we call it here in the United States, to the entire southeastern states. So you're beginning to see the ecosystem which constitutes and make up the basic living is under attack from cyberware.
And let us take a look at Indian news. The Prime Minister holds discussions with Vice President Kamala Harris on vaccines. Was this the right protocol? One wonders, sir.
It is. I think it's very unusual, first and foremost, to have vice president. I don't recall a vice president speaking to a prime minister. But having said that, and the second thing that worries, that also is a question mark here is Vice President Harris is speaking to Indian Prime Minister Modi on 80 million vaccines, of which only 7 million vaccines is to India. 7 million vaccines doesn't alter the course of India in any manner. So she discussed a whole range of vaccination. Today, the press is reporting in the United States that this is to do with mitigating the China vaccine diplomacy. It's not China vaccine diplomacy. People have forgotten in wave one, if you happen to be, an Indian American or an Indian origin person, India donated more than 60 million vaccines to people around the world. It received a lot of criticism that India should have kept that 60 million rather than donating it to the world in the first particular phase. China confronted India on this, which is to say that India is using political scoring points to distribute. People also forget when the world wanted hydroxychloroquine, the one that has been forgotten, HCQ, which is a immunobooster medicine. India was the one which became the supplier to the world when there was no vaccine going back to last year, including 29 million tablets at the request, waiving the export restrictions at the request of President Trump. President Trump was asked, are you going to use your good offices and make sure we get those 29 million? Or are you going to, because he happens to be your friend, this is Prime Minister Modi, you're just going to wave off? He said, no, I'm having a discussions with him. We will work this out. Right? So even at that point of time, the left-wing progressives wanted to take a dig at India, but today they're silent for a minuscule 7 million that is being given. So they say, okay, the critical vaccine supplies have been lifted, but people forget J&J have a deal to manufacture vaccines in India. Eli Lilly has a deal to manufacture vaccines in India. Novartis as a deal to manufacture vaccine in India. Sputnik as a deal to manufacture vaccines in India. Now, Pfizer is doing a deal to manufacture vaccines in India. So therefore, already there is a plan in place to get these things to manufacture, overcoming any deficiencies that is caused by these restrictions imposed from United States on a critical supply of an API, which makes up the vaccine.
And for those of you who are interested in knowing about other alternatives to solving this problem, there is a story that we carried yesterday in Ask Karthik episode number 5. This is available on all our social media channels. Do tune in. We are covering the case of a Indian medicine provider. His name is Anandaya. He is in Andhra Pradesh, and he has been demonstrating amazing recovery for people who are affected with COVID. Now it is beginning to start making the waves. We'll keep you posted on the developments. On other news, India is going to resume FTA, I'm assuming this is free trade agreement, talks with EU and the United Kingdom on the back of a very strong exports growth driven by engineering, petroleum products, and gems and jewelry. Bilateral trade with EU is now standing at 62.8 billion euros, and with the UK it is at 19 billion pounds. All this is good, and I think this will also give a boost to India's exports, isn't it?
The two components, I think, one is a strategic deterrence. Sleepy Joe, or our honorable president from United States, Mr. Joe Biden, and their own progressive agendas, whether they're going to create any deterrence. If that is the case, India must not be putting all eggs in one basket. So it's very good for them to resume the EU. Again, in DGI program we have covered, they're breaking the EU relationship into two components. One is a trade, the second is investments. So they want to have two parallel tracks so one doesn't conflict with the other. Investments is the foreign direct investments that goes into India. So 65 billion, 62 billion euros roughly translates to about 75 to 80 billion dollars, so which is a fairly sizable number. And then, of course, UK is now having unbundled itself from Euro, building bilateral trade partnerships. It has a trade partnership with Japan. It has a trade partnership with Singapore. It is now doing a partnership with India. All augurs well in terms of India trying to put an imprint on both on the trade and investments as it builds its $5 trillion economy.
And India hopes to achieve a 10% GDP growth based on government and stimulus programs. And India also vaccinates over 242 million doses. The active cases has now fallen to 1.71 million, and the recoveries crossed 211,500. Vaccination map is now going to be available. You can go to the website of Indian government to look at where things are being addressed. So your thoughts, very impressive.
Well, I think that India is well on its way. It had its hiccups in terms of managing the wave two, didn't anticipate, but it is well on its way. And as I say, it's a vast country. It will be besetted with a number of challenges and problems. But these numbers indicate, if one objectively looks at the numbers and looks at the volume of population and people and the density of population, because Indians have vast number of people concentrated, located not just only in one neighborhood, but within in homes, then you find that the numbers that they're dealing with is quite impressive. They've very quickly brought the active cases to about 1.7 million. Remember, India had active cases of 400 to 500,000. It went up to 4 million. They brought it down. Again, in the DGI, we have covered all these numbers over a period of time. Most important is the net discharge rate is now more than 200,000. The vaccinations is as 240 million, depending on the day. It's either 3 million or it is 2 million, or some days it's 1 million, depending on the progress. So they're also improving the supply mechanism. And I think we listed all the available vaccines. And I think from July, August, the number of vaccines that's available from a capacity point of view is going to dramatically shoot up. There was an issue around oxygen that also seems to have been addressed. So India has prepared itself not just for mitigating the big hiccup for which it was criticized, and for the wave 3, which now they're predicting is inevitable. And wave 3, they're also saying that it's targeted towards the children, so they're addressing that specific issue. It's also possible that India looks at this as a huge opportunity for exporting, because the world is desperately short of vaccines. I mean, this is a global news, but I'll just intersperse. Japan is supplying vaccines to Taiwan. That is the state. It's in a very bad state. 1.24 million vaccines was supplied by Japan yesterday. That is, today is Friday. They're Friday, to Taiwan, because China has denied them access. They threatened Pfizer not to supply vaccines to Taiwan. So Japan has stepped up and did. So Taiwan, remember, was made out to be a unique case, but that's not the case. There is a ramp up in COVID cases in Taiwan. Sorry, I deviated from India.
So Serum Institute will also be manufacturing Sputnik vaccines in India. Currently, it is being done by Dr. Reddy Laboratories, Hafkin Biopharmaceutical Corporation Limited, and two other public sector undertakings are also going to manufacture 23 crores of vaccines annually. Remember, viewers, we had shown you a roadmap of where the vaccines are going to be manufactured from various suppliers a few days ago on GDI. So it pays to watch GDI on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, because we go where nobody else has gone before. We're always ahead. Sorry to blow my own trumpet. Let's move on to global news now, sir. And an Indian think tank has warned of China's expanding influence on United Nations and its allied agencies, with UN promoting China foreign policies. Sir, we have so many organizations now that have been infiltrated by the Chinese Communist Party.
Yes, indeed. This report specifically outlines, was released on May 27th, outlines 4 out of the 15 agencies. 4 out of the 15 agencies, very pivotal ones. One is International Telecommunications Union, or called ITU. Another, UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Third, FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization. Fourth, International Communication and Aviation Union, ICAU. China, CCP, not China, CCP members head these organizations. With ITU, International Telecommunication Union, they have been advocating Huawei and the telecommunication standard across more than 190 countries. With International Civil Aviation Union, critical airline routes to Taiwan and such destinations have been blocked. Food and Agricultural Organization, they have a clear understanding how to direct aid as well as the food supplies. Because remember, China has significant food supply. It cannot produce food and milk to meet its own demands. It is driven by sourcing from various places around the world. In fact, New Zealand is one of the big areas which supplies milk products to China. And China bought all of those milk farms in dairy farms in New Zealand, as an example. Then the other one is UNIDO. You shape the industrial policies in such a manner that all roads lead to Belt and Road Initiative. So the report, when we get access to the full report, we'll put it up on the website. But these are examples of how CCP has directed the efforts and channel towards the China policies. They are part of the WHO. That is why WHO denied membership to Taiwan. And Taiwan has had access to WHO, but it was at the request of China. WHO meeting most recently held, Taiwan was blocked. It is in IMF, it is in World Bank, it is in International Agricultural Development Bank. So it has membership in all these institutions, and the members are from CCP, and they direct their efforts, which is towards the pro-China, fair China policy rather than the global needs.
Israel arrests top Hamas terror leader in West Bank. So remember that all the tension thus far has been in Gaza, which is a geographically separated region from West Bank. And now Israel has arrested the top Hamas terror leader in West Bank. And Hong Kong and Macau authorities ban events commemorating the June 4 Tiananmen Square massacre. Remember that Hong Kong and Macau used to be independent units not long ago. So whatever is happening in Hong Kong and of course in Macau, the United States is essentially doing nothing about it. And now China is beginning to threaten Taiwan. Additionally, Chinese Vice Premier Liu He holds candid discussions on trade with US Trade Representative Catherine Tai. Sir, Janet Yellen, we talked about yesterday, was holding talks. Today we are talking about the US Trade Representative Catherine Tai. What's going on? So the US is actually acting as if nothing is wrong with China.
Look, I think left and right, don't seem to reconcile. But dialogue is essential. Debate, discussion is essential. On one side, you had yesterday Biden banning 39 different companies from China, which seems to have direct collaboration. On the other side, you have these discussions. Much of the details are not visible, not made public. So you had Janet Yellen having meetings on bilateral trades and financial situation and topics of mutual interest. And then you have Catherine Tai, who is supposed to be a trade representative, holding discussions. What is happening? What is happening is a puzzle. What is the outcome that's going to come out of it? The outcome that's going to come out of it very soon, if we know Obama-Biden administration outcomes, there'll be some sort of a compromise. There's a lot of brouhaha that is going on, but at the end of the day, some kind of a compromise that's likely to come out. Remember, we also have both business as well as academic and all types of leaders in the United States who are saying, yeah, including Henry Kissinger, saying, hey, you cannot ruffle the feathers of China. You cannot ruffle the feathers of China. And you need to deal with them with caution and with sensitivity. I'm not sure I understand what that is. Whereas you want to impose bans with imputancy on all other nations, but you somehow feel that China is something different for all its flirtations with law.
And Biden prohibits investments in 59 Chinese companies allegedly tied to the military. This is an ongoing process. It's been going on for a long time. Trump also did the same thing. So as and when I think these things come out, we have more and more people, more and more companies being shut down or prohibiting investments. These are investments from US companies that might be mulling investing in Chinese companies, sir?
Yes, I think these are companies which have access to specific capabilities from United States, which may be aiding the Chinese military. So these are, I said 39, I stand corrected. There are 59 companies which have connections to the military. This is over and above those companies which Mr. Trump banned. There also some of them got delisted from the public companies got delisted from the NYSE. They were up, down, up, down. Eventually, they got delisted. Just one minute. I want to segue. Look, I worked with China in the 80s as a banker. I worked with three leaders, Wen Jiabao, Hu Jintao, and Jiang Zemin, when nothing existed, and we established trade commerce protocols. So therefore, this bashing is about the specific policies rather than as a nation. So we did a lot of things as a banker, as part of the team during the 80s and early 90s when nothing existed. And, we put a lot of things together. I've even given lectures in Tsinghua Institute in Shanghai. So this thing that we are up and speaking in DGI is very specifically at policies which are detrimental and not fair for a nation which should be behaving like the world's second largest economy.
The United Kingdom gets a green light to join the CPTPP deal, Japanese economic minister stated. Now, the CPTPP, as you know, is comprehensive and progressive trans-Pacific partnership. So your thoughts on this before we move on to markets?
Well, China was one of the people who asked Japan, we need to be a member. Again, we have covered this in DGI. The people who are applying for CPTPP, we actually did a very extensive fireside discussion on the whole notion and nature of the various trade partnerships that's prevalent and why it is important. Because as you go ahead and look at 2050, 54% of the economy, global GDP, will be coming from Asia. So UK, getting sense of this, applied for it. When you go back to the earlier shows, today they have been told, get ready, your membership is approved, start the process for joining the CPTPP, which is a huge win for Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson has a deal with ASEAN. Now he will be part of CPTPP. He has done deals with Japan. He's also doing deal with India. So he really is getting the back to business type of momentum, having unshackled himself from the euro.
And let's take a look at the markets quickly. The markets end the day flat and await May jobs report. and global inflation hits the highest level since 2008. And sir, your quick thoughts on markets, and then we can wind down for this week.
Markets are flat. There's still fear around inflation. Now the inflation has come. Now the global inflation report has come out. The report states that the average inflation is around 3.2%, which is very high relative to what we saw when we had the global financial crisis last 2008. Preceding the global financial crisis, the inflation level rates were going up because of the asset bubbles. United States itself, we have reported the inflation is around 4.2%. Right, this is the inflation is calculated excluding the oil prices and the food prices. But we add the oil prices and the food prices, we started around $35, $40 a barrel. We're now around $70 a barrel. So you can all calculate for yourself whether it's costing you to buy more or whether it's costing you to buy less. But the interest rates have been kept, so therefore make hay while the sun shines. So when you have low interest rates, borrow money. As long as you can repay it, invest, make a buck out of it, because nowhere the central banks are prepared to raise the interest rates.
And with that, we bring our week news to an end. And today is being Friday. We wish you a great weekend. We'll be back again bright and early next Monday. And before I conclude the show, I would like to let you know that I have my new book out of fiction called Who Painted My State Purple? And there was a small 15-second teaser that I had put out as a story on YouTube. Those of you who may have watched it may know what purple and state mean in the United States. In the United States, we've been seeing with each presidential election, some states flipping from red to blue or blue to red. And while they go from one of these colors to the other color, they go purple before they go to the other color, which essentially states that this book is about the changing sands of US politics, its demographics, and how elections can be easily manipulated. It's a book of fiction. It also starts with the name Who Painted. Sir, I look forward to sharing some thoughts with you on this, and I hope that my viewers, you will give me the same kind of support that you gave to my previous two books. This is the third in a Who Painted name brand, and let's see how it goes. It's a very interesting work that I've had the honor of doing, and Sridharji was enormously helpful in providing me with some very valuable insights on how to do the research for this book. Thank you once again, Sridharji, and as always, a pleasure, sir. We will see you again on Monday. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you.